Very good evening to you all. It's really, really good to have you back. And it is a beautiful opportunity for us to get into how we are equipped to be able to help people. And I think that it's going to be extremely beneficial tonight, because tonight we move away a little bit from the theory side, the theoretical side, and we move into the practical side. So it's going to be a very, very interesting session. Very interesting, believe me. Before we do that, however, I'd like to just welcome our live streamers. Hi, guys. I know that you're all over the place. It's lovely to have you watching. Please don't forget to follow the link below, and you'll be able to pick up your notes. And any queries or questions, you know to come through to myself or Nicole at any stage. So for those of you that are live streaming today, when we do the practical exercise, you're going to be doing it on your own, but obviously nobody will be checking up on you, so I'm sure you're going to get everything right. In having said that, I'm going to ask that you bow your heads with me in a word of prayer. Precious Lord, we come before you. We thank you that we once again meet, that so many people have taken the time to come back out on this evening because they have a desire to either heal for themselves or to be able to help others to heal. And Lord, as they gain strength and as they gain confidence in your word, and also in some of the areas of reaching out, that they may just know, Lord, that we are never alone when we help people, for we have your indwelling Holy Spirit who is with us at all times. And Lord, even when we feel weak and inadequate, when we feel that we are not able to answer some of the queries or questions, we know, Lord, that your Holy Spirit is an intercessor and that he mediates on our behalf and that he actually touches people's lives when we can't. So, Lord, I just pray your blessing on everything that is said this evening, and may people's hearts and minds be open to what they hear, that they may take this and run with it. For the time is short. Now is the time that we need to reach out in as many ways as we possibly can. So we thank you, Lord, for the privilege and for the purpose. In your precious name. Amen. Right, everybody's got their notes. Congratulations to everybody on your session 4 that was marked. You've obviously handed in session 5 tonight. Session 4, very well done. Good answers. You have an incredible ability to answer things that a lot of people can't answer. And when I say that, I am truly amazed that I'm marking over 40 to 50 assignments, and in that marking, there is nobody who misses the mark. That you all know why there is suffering on the planet. And many people go through life saying, why? And you as a group of people are now fully equipped to know that we're part of a broken planet. And the fact that God allows suffering, but he doesn't cause it. And that's a lot of what came through. You understand that nothing bad comes from God, only what is good, and that he has no desire to hurt us or harm us in any way. So you guys are equipping yourselves in a most amazing way, and just that in itself is enough to comfort so many people when they say, why is God doing this to me? And you know, it's not God. So it's wonderful. Right. Looking at your notes, we're dealing with crises in counseling tonight. And a crisis is something that cannot be avoided. So it is a turning point that cannot be avoided. Life is full of them. You just get to a point in your life where you are settling down, you're getting into a good routine, you are feeling like all the drama of bringing up the children is over. You can send them on their way and everything's going to be fine, and you are looking to just have a little bit of time to enjoy life, and then something horrific happens. And it can be the death of a spouse when you are on the brink of retirement. It can also be a mugging or a burglary or something that just throws you completely into a crisis. It can be the loss of a job. There are just so many different things that it can be. That's what we want to look at tonight. I do need to pre-warn you, and I think I say this quite often, and I'm not sure I stick to my word, but I'm going to try and be brief with the notes because we have some actual situations that I want to put to you for you to fathom through to be able to see how you fare. So this is not about passing or failing. It's not about getting anything right or wrong, because fortunately you will never meet these people. Well, maybe fortunately you will, but fortunately you will never meet them. So it's an opportunity for you to put into practice some of the things that you need to. On page 1, I want you to just look at the second paragraph. A crisis is a turning point that cannot be avoided. Crisis situations may be expected or unexpected. They're filled with danger because they disrupt life. They threaten to overwhelm the people who are affected. And there are emotional, spiritual ups and downs, and at times we must exert extra effort to deal with emergencies or unexpected problems. Nevertheless, we learn how to cope and are able to meet the insecurities and challenges of life successfully. I have spoken about this before, but I love the opportunity to reiterate, because the more you hear it, the more you will begin to apply it. You can't hear something once and expect to remember it. You need to hear it 3 or 4 times constantly. So often we say that we can deal easily with the little ups and downs in life, but even in a crisis, it is imperative for you to remember 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react. And by the way, this can be something that is tiny. It can be something very, very small. It can be something like a person who takes your parking space, although you've been waiting for it for a long time, and they zip in front of you. 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react. This reaction over here not only will be a blessing to the person who has done you harm, but it will also be a blessing to you. Because the more you control your emotions and the more stable you are, the more you will be able to help people. So it's very important to remember that. So that can literally be somebody taking your parking space. But it can also be the loss of a loved one, or a tragic accident, or something that comes your way. Now you say, listen, I have no control over my emotions at a time like that. But just the thought, you actually do have a choice that you can make. You do have a choice. If you feel like you are going to be completely out of control, and I'm not referring to an initial response if somebody comes and tells you that a loved one is gone. You can't control that. It's gone. You're going to react the way you want to react. And it is out of your hands. But I'm talking about once you have heard areas and things that are going to actually be important for you to absorb. It's going to be your choice whether you take it to heart, whether you apply it, or whether you choose to remain in that state. Now, this reaction, when we're going through the grieving process, can be anything from a month to 2 years. But it's a choice you make to make good decisions, to make sure that you are handling the situation. When you feel weak and you feel vulnerable, don't try and cope on your own. There are people around you who will help you. And that's what you need to tell people if you're counseling them and they're going through a crisis. Don't try and do it on your own. I have to tell you that I may have mentioned last time, but a little learner who has been in the school a very long time lost her father, and one session Literally, this child, I got an email from her mother to say that she has cried herself to sleep, literally every night for 4 years. And the day after she came for counseling was the first night she didn't cry herself to sleep. 4 years. It is absolutely mind-boggling. And her mom wrote and said, I cannot believe it's the first night that she's gone to sleep without crying. And then I got an email to say it's the first night that she slept through. Unbelievable. And I can tell you that I was not saying anything out of the fact is that when a loved one leaves us, whether you say they go to Cape Town, or whether you say they go to Durban, or whether you say they go to heaven, it doesn't make a difference. They can't be with you. But the destination just means that they can't communicate with us again. And as soon as you realize that they are safe and happy, you will get over it. So, information brings incredible consistency and stability. When you are guiding people, or even yourself, never be afraid to speak to somebody and get help. Don't think for 1 second that any one of us can do it on our own, because we can't. We need to rely on the Lord, and we need to rely on other people as well to guide us and help us and encourage us, and it makes a world of difference. I want you to turn over the page. We're going to look at page 2, the Bible and crisis types. So the Bible is filled with examples of people who faced crises. And even the Lord Jesus Christ himself faced crises. Paul the apostle, shipwrecks, beatings. He eventually lost his life. He was taken out of the city and he was killed. Incredible trauma. And the Bible is there as a guidebook for us to look to, that we may understand a little bit better what we may have to face in life. So we want to look at the paragraph down there under the Bible and crisis types, the second paragraph under that heading. Contemporary writers have identified 3 types of crises, each of which has both modern and biblical examples. So the first of these, and you need to become more and more familiar with this terminology, there are 3: accidental or situational crises. These are when there's a sudden threat. It is an intensely disruptive event or an unexpected loss. It can be the death of a loved one, the discovery of a serious illness, the experience of rape or other violence, a pregnancy out of wedlock, social disruptions such as a breakout of war, or even economic depression, the loss of one's job or savings, a sudden loss of respect and status, are all situational stresses that affect both individuals and their families. So you can see it's either accidental, in which case it's tragic, it's sudden, it comes as a shock, or it is situational. You lose a job, you lose your savings, somebody rips you off, you actually find yourself pregnant when you didn't want to be pregnant. You find that there is riots happening in your street, in your suburb. It can be a threat when you are in a shop and there's a holdup. So those are accidental or situational crises. Developmental crises, page 3, is a secondary type, and they happen in the course of normal human development. Okay, so is it a crisis when you start school? Let me tell you, there is a huge amount of anxiety with starting school. There are some kids that don't sleep for weeks just because they are afraid and they don't know where they're going to go on the first day. You're starting a new job. You don't know where you're going to go. You don't know who you've got to speak to. You don't know what you're going to do. You don't know what to expect. So throughout the human developmental process, there are these different crises that people have to face. Men are able to hide their emotions a lot better than women because they are not as highly strung as women. Most men are not. But it doesn't change the impact on their lives. They just hide it better. So it looks like they're coping fine, and they may even be telling you, if you are a spouse, stop worrying, it's going to be okay. But deep down, they are internalizing it. And that's when, sometimes when a man loses his job and he says, it's okay, I can manage, I can cope. He internalizes it, and then problems start becoming more and more real because it's been bottled up. So going away to college, it's all very exciting, but it actually generates quite a high level of stress. Adjusting to marriage and then to parenthood, handling criticism, facing retirement or declining health, or adapting to the death of one's friends can all be crises that demand new approaches to coping and problem solving. You may find in the course of your life that you are helping an older generation. There may be people that you do speak to. It may be a relative. It may not be. Even people that you are surrounded by, and they are an older generation. And you will find them feeling and looking a little bit more and more and more depressed, and you don't know why. And you need to stop and say to them, let's talk about what's happening. Why are you stressing? And what you will find often is that their friends, all their school friends, their dear family friends are passing away around them because life is fragile. When you get to 80, 85 or older, you may be the last one in a friendship group that's left. And it's a very real crisis because you know you're the last to go, and you know that people that you loved and cared for, they're all going, and now you're being left. So those are the things that we need to be sensitive about when we are helping people within that generation. So that's developmental crises. Then we look at existential crisis. It's the third type, and it relates often to our own personal turmoil, having to face disturbing truths, often about ourselves. I set out to actually achieve this degree. I didn't achieve it. I am a failure. I have been married to somebody and they have dumped me. I am a failure. I made wrong decisions. I should have looked out for my kids more. I am a failure. And then, of course, I'm now a widow and single again. My life has no purpose. My marriage has ended. I'm too old to achieve my life goals. I kept putting it off until tomorrow. I'm going to do it. I'm going to start it. And before you know it, you're actually sitting, rocking in a rocking chair, and you can't do it because you feel you are a failure. So that has got to do with your existence. And the existential crisis has got to do with a combination of accidental, situational, and developmental all coming together. There is an overlapping, there is a dovetailing. So let's have a look at crisis intervention. Crisis intervention is a way of providing immediate, temporary, emotional first aid to victims of psychological and physical trauma. So the intervener must react skillfully and quickly to deal with behavior that is often disorganized, confused, and potentially harmful. You have to have a starting point as a counselor. Since they frequently appear suddenly and are of limited duration, crises are best treated as soon as possible after they arise. There's several counseling goals. We're going to look at 4, which are 4 of the most important ones. So you get a phone call from a friend who says, I'm feeling really, really depressed because a very good friend of mine has passed away. And you say, oh, don't worry, I'll pray for you. It's Monday today. Maybe we can go out for tea on Saturday. It is preferable to do something practical to deal with that crisis as soon as possible. The longer a person remains in that state without help, the more they cement that depression. So it's important that you explain to them as fast as possible, it's okay, it's going to be okay. This is what you need to think about. This is how we put it into perspective. Heaven is not a threat. So your friend loved the Lord. You actually are only thinking about yourself. Don't think about yourself. Get on and fulfill God's plan so that when you get recalled to heaven as an ambassador, the two of you can have a good conversation about, they went first, you had more work to do, but now you are reunited. All of those statements make a world of difference if they are made timelessly. The first goal, to help the person cope effectively with a crisis situation and return to his or her usual level of functioning as soon as possible. Number 2, to decrease the anxiety and the apprehension and other insecurities that may persist during the crisis and after it passes. To teach crisis management techniques so that the person is better prepared to anticipate and deal with future crises, and then to consider biblical teachings about crises so that the person learns from the crisis and grows as a result. Page 4. Crisis counselors cannot treat every person or group of people, including families, in the same way. Every single situation is different. Don't look at it and use pat answers. I'm going to learn this particular technique and I'm going to tell them, this is what you do. Every situation is different. People have different personalities, so they respond differently. There are times when you will look and you will assess and you will know this person needs incredible empathy at this time. And then you will get a person who is saddened by what has happened, but has a little inclination of enjoying the drama. I'm not sure if you know what I mean, but there are people who go through crises and they actually love the attention because all the focus goes to them. Those people, you actually have to be firm. So you're showing a level of empathy, but you're also giving firm directives. To a person who needs just empathy and not firm directives, they are heartbroken, they are really battling. But you have to ascertain as you're talking to people. Sometimes you'll get the impression, and you get just from speaking to them, and you will know, this is what you need to go home and do. These are the things that I want you to sort out, and I want you to think through, and I want you to come back and see me. Philippians is a beautiful book to direct people to, even if you ask them to write out a couple of verses from the book of Philippians, which is the book of psychology, which you guys have all been through already. And give them little tasks to do, because it actually shows that they are prepared to put in the work. All right, then we're going to have a look at the psychological first aid. And the psychological first aid is, once you've identified that people are different, they need different things, you keep it in mind, and the counselor can intervene in several ways during times of crisis. The following is a checklist for giving psychological first aid in times of mental health emergencies. Point number 1, when a person goes through a difficult time, don't say, I'm waiting for them, they can make contact with me at any time, because they may not be strong enough to make contact. So you make contact and let them know that you are thinking of them and that you are prepared to help. Reduce anxiety immediately, because you will be calm, you will be relaxed, and you will be able to settle that counseling. I remember a little lighty, it was about 10 years ago, and we had a spiked fence on the side by the high school. And this little lighty was in the primary school and decided that he was not going to walk all the way around, because he's got to walk all the way around because there's a spiked fence there so that he can't get out of the premises. And boys will be boys. So he climbed over the spiked fence, but never quite made it. He slipped. And it was one of those spikes that go in and you can't get it out. However, he was falling, so his whole weight caused him to fall. And they brought him to my office, and I remember just thinking, action. It was chaos. Everybody was like, because it was so dramatic and there was blood spurting and everything else. And I just said, get a towel, do this, do that, do the other. Goodness only knows how or why. Wrapped the towel around his leg, put pressure there, got somebody to take us up to Medicross, went in with him, waiting for his mother to arrive. Doctor looked at it. It was a big mess. He needed like 32 stitches. And he was there saying, he was talking to me and I was talking to him, and he was calm and everything was fine. And his mom walked in. Yes, we've done everything we can do. Here he is. And then I walked out and it hit me. And I was like, I need a bed. Fast. And it's just so funny because that's what you need to do. It doesn't matter how you react when nobody's looking. But fortunately, I was at Medicross, and there were lots of pulled curtains, and I just went in and lay in a bed and stuck my legs up in the air and was like, breathe, breathe, give me a brown paper bag, do something. So it was quite funny. And then I quickly crept out before anybody saw how pasty I was looking. So it's okay, whatever happens behind the scenes is fine, but when that family is in need, you just have the strength, and I believe the Lord gives us the ability to do that. Okay, so we make contact, we reduce anxiety, we focus on issues. So in times of crisis, it's easy to be overwhelmed by what appears to be a mass of confusing facts, potential problems, and decisions that need to be made. As a somewhat objective outsider, you are in a good position, and please highlight this, you're in a good position to help the counsellee decide what specific issues must be faced first and what immediate problems need to be solved. Try to focus on the present situation rather than discussing the past. I am repeating again what I know I have covered already, but I need to make sure that you are able to follow the correct procedure. So somebody comes into your office. They are offloading. This pen. The first thing is that they have lost a sibling. And they are extremely traumatized. Funeral arrangements. No support. Financial problems. Okay, so that's what a person will come in and they will be talking and they will be saying, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm not going to be able to cope. I don't even know where to begin. What am I going to do? I've got to make the funeral arrangements. And I don't have anybody that I can really call on. My husband is not interested. He's not a type of person. He just withdraws. He's not there to be able to support me. And then I don't know, how on earth am I going to actually deal with this? And you say, stop. Calm down. Let's take one step at a time, because what we're going to do is that this is your backpack and it's filled with rocks. We are unpacking those rocks. So let's look at this and let's analyze which of these is the thing that's worrying you the most. Okay, the funeral arrangements. Great. So let's make that an A priority. Funeral arrangements. Please don't worry about the funeral arrangements. We have got people that are fully equipped. I, as a counselor, can assist you. I can take you through those arrangements. We can tell you what to do. We can explain to you. And then what we can also do is that we can negotiate with funeral home to actually see whether there is a policy or a discount. If you do not have the financial means, it is not on you to have to make the financial contributions. You have to then consider other family members, and we will work through everything there, we will work through that. And then also, if you can't do that, you're going to have to make cutbacks, which nobody will even notice, and we can guide you. For instance, you do not need flowers that are going to cost 500 Rand. You can get a simple spray of roses that will cost you 20 Rand. You don't have to do that. You can literally go and buy a bunch of 10 roses, and each person comes and places a rose on the casket. Are you getting the gist of where I'm going? So every family member takes a rose. There's no roses or flowers. You place the rose on the casket, if the casket's going to be present, and you actually say a prayer. And then everybody's participating, and it's literally going to cost you 20 Rand. There are ways and means that you can do that. You can assist, obviously, from a catering side and everything else. So please do not worry about this. We're going to break this down, and we're going to be able to assist you. We can print the pamphlets. We can do what we need to do. With regard to support, you're going to need counseling, and therefore I would appreciate it if you would actually come in to see me. And now that this crisis has happened, we're going to meet about funeral arrangements, but once that's all finalized, we're going to meet at least twice a week for me to be able to give you the spiritual input that is necessary. Okay. This and that go together. This is dealt with automatically. Do you see how information can change that very dramatic scenario into something bearable? And when you look at it without the explanation, you're like, oh, how am I going to help? You need to know that you are a member of a church, and as a church, people to us are very, very precious. So whatever we can provide them with, you have that resource to recommend. You're not alone. If a person comes to us and they're having difficulty because they can't pay for a minister, we will do that funeral at no cost. We don't generally charge for funerals, but sometimes a funeral home will put on a big fee, and then we will get hold of the funeral home and say, please do not charge the family. So there are many, many things that can be done to assist families in this predicament. Very importantly, they need to know that right now, they're going to get help. And in the future, they're going to get help. So it will come together, and you go through each one of this. You help them to look for policies. We had, just recently, there was a lady who lost her daughter, and her daughter and herself are from Lesotho, and there was quite a big fundraising scheme because they literally had no money to be able to get the body back to Lesotho. And then we contacted the family in Lesotho to find that they have a funeral policy. And the funeral home in Lesotho was so caring and so kind that they sent the hearse all the way from Lesotho to come and collect this precious lady, and her body and her mom were transported back. And all the pressure was taken off the family because of a caring funeral home in Lesotho. But somebody's got to look on behalf of the family. So there are always ways. If you're in a situation and you don't know how to help, speak to people who do know how to help and where they can get assistance from. And that's what the networking is all about. We are members of one body, the body of Christ, and we are here to help with counseling needs. Okay, so we focused on issues. We evaluate resources. The counselor's willingness to help is one important resource for the counseling in crisis, but there are others. Even if you are multi-talented and you've got plenty of time on your hands, you should not try to be the hero who walks alone with a person in crisis. Counsellors often feel isolated and in need of supportive acceptance from a variety of people. So you may say, look, I'm at home. Pop in for a cup of tea every day. Great. And then you go away on holiday for 2 weeks? Where does it leave that person? So you've got to be very, very careful. People do feel that you're dropping them. They feel like you are not interested in them anymore if you do it just like that. So be very careful. You've got to give them the tools to be able to keep going through this on their own. You can see them twice in the first week, once in the second week, and then you start seeing them every second week with responsibility and encouraging them to come to church. Every church service is the most beautiful counseling session. You remember that. They don't have to come to a counselor. They can literally hear the word of God and be given the most encouraging message on the planet. And if you would like, you can invest in some of our DVDs. I've got the one in my office, I think I told you about. And when people say to me, I just don't know where to start. Discipline over regret. Go listen. That's the sermon I choose. I've got such a low self-esteem. Purpose over popularity. Go listen. I don't know what the others are, I've forgotten. But I know there's a whole heap of them and they're jolly, jolly good. So you have this close by and you just make sure that you are giving people the fishing rod. Yo, that was a good comeback. You're giving people the fishing rod because when you give them a DVD that they've got to listen to or a CD to listen to, they've got to go and do the work. It's not you regurgitating information and encouragement all the time. They've got to go and put it on, press play. And if they don't do that, that's their loss. Okay, then we have a look at spiritual resources. The Christian counselor must never lose sight of the indwelling presence and guidance of the Holy Spirit. Never lose sight of the indwelling presence of the Holy Spirit. God with us at all times. Personal resources. Most people have intellectual abilities, skills, past experiences, helpful attitudes or motives that can help them grow through the crisis. In pointing these out, you need to be realistic. Remember that a simple listing of counselee strengths and reminders of past success in coping can be both reassuring and helpful. So when a person is speaking to you, you are looking at them and you are saying, you are a very intelligent person and the Lord is going to use you. Through this crisis, you will be equipped to help others. And it is beautiful to see the expression on their faces because it is encouragement. And it's like, really? Do you really think I can? And I'm like, I really think you can because God has given you the ability. And He's given you the opportunity to hear what you're hearing so that you can pass it on. And it is absolutely beautiful to see. Interpersonal resources. Page 6, plan intervention. That's what I would call planning intervention. After evaluating the problem, considering available resources, it is helpful for the counselor and counselee to look at the available facts and list various courses of action. How realistic is each one of these? Which should be done first, second, and subsequently. That's exactly that. Okay. There is a reference, a statement, a quote, and it says, and this is very important for tonight's talk as well. I would really like you to take this to heart. We must do for others what they cannot do for themselves, but we must not do for them what they will not do for themselves. The problem is finding the wisdom to know the difference. You take a person so far when they do not have the ability to help themselves. When they become strong enough to help themselves and they choose not to help themselves, you cannot still be doing that for them. We then encourage action. The counsellor may need to encourage counsellors into action, help them to evaluate progress, if necessary, modify plans to take further actions. Help them to look back and see where they've come from, because they forget. They sit there, they've managed to sort out so much of their stuff, but because they've been part of the journey, which has been hard, they've not stopped to see how far they've come. So you need to encourage them to stop and evaluate. I want you to jump down to instilling hope. In all counseling, improvement is more likely if counselees can be given a sense of realistic hope about the future. Sorry. Hope brings relief from suffering because it's based on a belief that things will get better, and it helps us avoid despair. It releases energy to meet the crisis situation. Over the page, follow up. Crisis counseling is usually brief. After 1 or 2 sessions, the counselor returns to the routines of life and may not come for counseling again. Is the person getting along satisfactorily now that the major point of crisis is past? Even though counseling may no longer be needed, follow-up interest can encourage the counselor and remind him or her that somebody still cares and remembers. You are not asking somebody to come again for another counseling session. Crisis counseling is brief. People have to get back into routines. You can't expect them to come again and again. You can tell very quickly if a person has received what you've said. You do not need to repeat yourself over and over and over. You don't want to be a dripping tap. You want to give them the resources, and they've either got it. If they haven't got it, you give it again until they start getting it. But you cannot keep pulling them back. So, crisis counseling is usually brief. But what we call the follow-up interest. Follow-up interest means a phone call. Been thinking of you, hoping you're doing okay, keeping you in prayer, holding you close to our hearts, just trusting the Lord that you are going to be strong. Bye-bye. They may want to talk, and you can talk on the phone, it's not a problem. But you do not have to encourage more counseling sessions. It's not counseling per se, it's encouragement. Referrals. Sometimes we help counselees most by referring them to someone else whose training and expertise and availability can be of special assistance. So referral does not mean necessarily that the original counselor is incompetent or trying to get rid of the counselee. No one person is skilled enough to counsel everyone, and referral is often a way to show your desire to have the counselee get the best help possible. People should be referred when they're not showing signs of improvement after several sessions. Sometimes they need legal advice. They are severely depressed or suicidal. They show bizarre or extremely aggressive behavior. They appear to be severely disturbed emotionally or have problems that are beyond the counselor's area of expertise. In cases like this, you could be dealing with somebody who has bipolar disorder, somebody who's schizophrenic. And I know that I have also mentioned this in the past. You cannot speak to a person and expect them to become rational and reasonable when there are chemical imbalances, because they can't become rational. It is beyond their control. So you can talk and you can say, I'm going to have a word of prayer for you, but they are still going to be highly anxious, or they're still going to be seeing figures in the dark, or they're going to actually think you are the man from the moon and you're actually a woman from Westring. But there's constant, you just don't know. And you do get people like that, and you can't always help them. And that's when you have to say, I'm going to speak to your family. It's very important that you get to see a doctor. Speak to the family, refer them, and you will be absolutely amazed how different they are when you meet them the next time. It is then that you need to follow up your counseling. And that's why I say you've sometimes got to hand it over to people who are more equipped to deal with those very complex situations. When it comes to their spiritual well-being, you pick it up again and you make sure, are you going to church? How are you feeling? Are you reading good books? Are you reading the scriptures? Can I give you this guideline on daily devotions? What, this, that, the other. You got it. Right. So referrals, very important. We're now moving into the section on counseling dilemmas. Okay. What I want to do here is I want you to look at various dilemmas, and I have pinpointed 4 of them, and I would like you guys to have the opportunity to just talk through with other fellow counselors or wannabe counselors in prep, that you are able to come up with some scenarios as to what to do. If there's anybody who does not want to participate, you are under no obligation to participate. What I'm asking you to do, and it is a very basic request, it's not a big deal, is to get together in a group with other people who are present and talk about these scenarios and put in what you think and say what you think and hear other people's opinions, because people are so different. And then we're going to come back and we are going to actually have a look at what you thought, what would be the correct thing to do. A lot of what you will be saying is very practical, very rational, and it may be way out. Some of it may be, don't do that, do that. It doesn't matter. This is a learning curve, and this is where we move from the theoretical side to the practical side. Please do not feel bad if you do not want to participate. Is there anybody here who doesn't want to participate? And if so, I'm going to ask that you please move, and don't feel bad if you would move over to that side of the church over there. Okay. If you do feel like participating, it's going to be lots and lots of fun, and we're going to do it in 4 groups. So I'm literally going to just ask, let's do, I think down to Gillian, if that would be, if you ladies, yeah, you all are all ladies, if you would just be one group, please take yourselves off, go and find a corner, go into the mother's room. There is a light there if you want to go and talk in the mother's room. They're nice couches. They get first option. I don't know why. Okay? Then I'm going to ask for, I think, Marissa, if I could ask for you, the ladies behind you, plus those on that side. That'll be another group. Okay? Then we will have everybody up here. You will make a group, and then you guys will make a group. Woo! All right. I would like group number 1 to discuss the first issue, okay, which is family counseling. You get family counseling. The group across there, towards the back, a complex family situation. And then this group over here, you're going to do the death of a counselee. And that group over there, life matters. Okay, you're very welcome to get together, because it's hard if you're sitting in pews. It's easier if you, even if you stand around. I'm going to give you, say, 10. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you that you can stop for tea and coffee now as well if you would like. Grab a cup of tea, coffee, go through to the hall. However you want to work it, feel free.
temptation comes my way, and when I cannot stand, I'll lean on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. In this time of desperation, when all we know is doubt and fear, there is only one foundation. We believe, we believe. In this broken generation, when all is dark, you help us see. There is only one salvation. We believe, we believe, we believe in God the Father. We believe in Jesus Christ. We believe in the Holy Spirit, and He's given us new life. We believe in the crucifixion. We believe that He conquered death. We believe in the resurrection, and He's coming back again. We believe. So let our faith be more than anthems, greater than the songs we sing. Let our weakness and temptations, we believe, we believe, we believe in God the Father. We believe in Jesus Christ. We believe in the Holy Spirit, and He's given us new life. We believe in the crucifixion. We believe that He conquered death. We believe in the resurrection, and He's coming back again. Let the lost be found and the dead be raised in the here and now. The glad men, let the church live loud. Our God will save. We believe, and the gates of hell will not prevail. For the power of God is stronger than. Now we know Your love will never fail. We believe, we believe in God the Father. We believe in Jesus Christ. We believe in the Holy Spirit, and He's given us new life. We believe in the crucifixion. We believe that He conquered death. We believe in the resurrection, and He's coming back. He's coming back again. He's coming back again. as the eyes begin to open and the blindness meets the light. If you have soul, say, I see the world in light. I see the world in wonder. I see the world in life, bursting in living color. I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. Have you ever seen the wonder in the air of second light? Having come out of the waters with the old one left behind. If you have soul, say, I see the world in light. I see the world in wonder. I see the world in life, bursting in living color. I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. I see the world in grace. I see the world in gospel. I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. I'm walking in the wonder. You're the wonder in my life, turning wilderness to wonder. If you have soul, say, I see the world in love. I see the world in freedom. I see the only way. You're the wonder in my life. I see the world your way, and I'm not afraid to follow. I see the world your way, and I'm not ashamed to say so. I see the only way, and I'm walking in the light. I see the world in light. I see the world in wonder. I see the world in life, bursting in living color. I see the world your way, and died for me. I see his wounds, his hands, his feet, my Savior on that cursed tree. His body bound and drenched in tears, they laid him down in Joseph's tomb, the entrance sealed by heavy stone, Messiah still and all alone. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God.
Then on the third, at break of dawn, the Son of Heaven rose again. Oh, tremble death, where is your sting? The angels roar for Christ the King. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. Shall return in robes of white, the blazing sun shall pierce the night, and I will rise among the saints, my gaze transfixed on Jesus' face.
seen the wonder in the glimmer of first sight, as the eyes began to open and the blindness meets the light? If you have so say, I see the world in light, I see the world in wonder, I see the world in life, bursting in living color. I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. Have you ever seen the wonder in the air of second light? Having come out of the waters with the old one left behind.
All right, I think we're back in the land of action. Sorry to our live streamers. You had enough time there to do the dishes, the washing, and the housework. We're moving across to the family counseling. I'm going to ask, please, Sash is going to be walking around with a roving mic so that you are able to just make comments. You don't have to hold the mic. She will hold it for you because she'll be flitting between people who want to speak. And we know how much you love to speak. That's fantastic. Perfectly in order if you've got a spokesperson. The other thing you need to know, and I'm just putting it out there, if you sound funny over the microphone, just remember I've got to stand here every week. Okay, so it's payback time. All right. Group number 1, and I'm going to just read out what the scenario is in case the other groups haven't read it. You've been counseling a family for 2 weeks about serious arguments in the home and control issues by the father towards the mother and son. But you get the feeling that there's much more happening than what you are being told. The teenage son speaks to you privately and says that he would like to see you on his own. The son is aged 16. What should you do?
Hello, everyone. Sandy. We looked at this question, and the first point of call is we would ask the parents if we could see each member of the family individually without mentioning that the son had actually requested an audience privately. If the family agrees, then that's fine. But if the family doesn't agree, then we will tell the son that if there is something really bad happening and he's in danger, or he feels his life or his mother is in danger, that he can escalate it perhaps to the law or perhaps speak to a school guidance counselor. Failing that, if it's not a matter of life and death, then we will suggest that each member of the family write a letter with their feelings and experiences and hand the letter over. That way
Okay,
we get
thank you very, very much. Very well answered. The fact is, unfortunately, in this day and age, a girl can have an abortion at the age of 12 years old and not tell her parents. But you cannot counsel a child without the permission of their parents. So when you're dealing with a minor, and I'm not joking, I'm being absolutely serious. The law says that if you are 12 years old and you want to have an abortion, you do not have to inform your parents. But when it comes to counseling, you do have to have parental permission. The important thing, which has been covered, is that you need to get a little bit of a gist from the child. If you are sensing that there are suppression issues, the best person to try and get hold of and speak to would be who? The mother. That is where you're going to get it, because she's going to want to protect her son. You've got to go to the adult who has the authority to be able to get to the son. So she can basically come for counseling without her husband even knowing about it, and she's not breaking the law. You've got to get to that mom. And you need to tell the boy that you are following the correct channels. If that child says they do not care how their father reacts and they are prepared to actually go for it regardless of how he responds, you still have to get the permission of the mother. So in a school situation where I do a lot of counseling of minors, I can counsel them. A lot of them will come and they will ask for counseling. And I will counsel them without the permission of the parents, but that is because I have an open door policy. The parents know I have an open door policy. So if they have a problem with that, they can stipulate and say, I don't want my child to ever go into the counselor's office, which they don't do. So I use that quite effectively. And there are times where children have been hit very badly by their parents, and it forms abuse. It's not a hiding by any means, it's actually abusive. And in having called the parents in, having seen the marks on the child's body, we've called the parents in, and they have thanked us that we actually took the matter further because they say that it shows we cared. What a dilemma. So very well answered. I think the most important thing here is the individual meetings are good, but I doubt you're going to get, the husband is going to remain very closed because normally the biggest abusers are the nicest people in public. So they're really nice. They'll be total gentlemen, and they will tell you how much they've done for their family and how much they care for their family. They will not let you in on what's happening. So it's the mother who becomes your conduit to get to understand, because she will tell you what has been happening to her son, between the father and the son, in protecting. And you can literally say to her, I'm not here to interfere. I just want to let you know that should you ever need assistance and intervention, you have our full support. We will step in at any time. Here is my number. Please make sure that you call. And then, would you have any objection to me actually meeting with your son? And she will probably say, no, not at all. The father, who's the oppressor, will have an objection, so you don't ask him. So you go where the going's good. Question, Sash, where are you? There's a question at the back there, please, for those that are live streaming.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, do you need written consent from the parents to counsel a child? Because in that sort of situation, what if the mother all of a sudden said, no, I didn't give her permission to counsel my son because she's maybe fearful?
I don't think, I have never got written permission. So normally what would happen is I do use WhatsApp a lot. So I would work via WhatsApp. So it's not actually, I know what you're meaning, but I will actually say to the mother, please would you give consent or whatever. And I've got most of that comes across on WhatsApp. So I do have a record. It is preferable, if you are dealing with a sensitive situation like this, it's preferable because you want them to be able to deny it because you never want them to be nailed for it. So it's okay to do that. But I would say WhatsApp message, perfectly okay. Good question. Any other questions on this particular scenario? Okay, let's move on to a complex family situation. You've been counseling a married couple for several weeks. The couple came to you because of problems they were having in their relationship. During the process, you have seen the pair separately, at which time you learned from the husband that he's only staying with his wife because of the 2 children. The wife, meanwhile, has confided to you that her husband is not the biological father of one of the children. If you were confronted with this dilemma, how would you deal with this couple? Who's the spokesperson? Is there a spokesperson? Is nobody talking? Anybody want to talk?
Okay, I'm going to attempt to answer this one. So we had a lot of discussions.
That's okay. Don't worry if you just throw ideas around.
Okay. So obviously in this situation, there's a husband and a wife, and there are children involved. But we also don't know the depth of the situation. So we would start by establishing what the situation is from both parties. And what we see here is that they each have a concealed truth. The one has kept it a secret that the one child is not his, and the husband has also kept the secret that he is not actually wanting to be with the wife anymore. So we would have to spend some time looking into what has led them to that stage, gain understanding around their lives, and what has sort of led to that being a sort of a cause and effect kind of situation. We would also have to understand their personalities, their dispositions. We don't know who initiated counseling. Was it the husband or the wife, or was it mutually agreeable? And because it is a complex family situation, we also know that families are sort of systems, so we have to understand the greater family impact as to what might have caused this problem. Also, we spoke about communication, so it would be at some point, once we've worked through a lot of the issues why they originally came for counseling, we would then eventually get to the point of that truth has been withheld and communication is obviously not great, and then eventually get them to open up to one another and take
Well
it
said.
from there.
Good. Very good. All right. The first thing you need to ascertain, which is exactly what has been covered, I'm just going to unpack that answer because it is quite intensive, but it's well answered. What made them get married? First point. What brought them together? I nearly used shorthand there. What brought them together? That's the point. You've got to go back into the relationship. Once you've established, did they get married because she was expecting? Did they get married because they were madly in love? Did they get married because of convenience? Did she force him into it? Did he force her into it? What actually was the root of the relationship? You've got to go back to the root cause. Once you establish that, it can go in any direction, so it is very hypothetical, but let's say that they were happily married and that they decided they'd been together for like 7 or 8 years and they decided it was time now to get married. You need to establish whether they were in love or in a comfort zone, because there's a big difference. Some people don't know how to live without each other as the best of friends. Were there stars and stripes? Was there chemistry? Because many people say, I've given up 7 years, 8 years, 9 years of my life, 5 years, even 2 years. I've given up this time. I don't want to start all over again looking for a relationship. We're going to make it work. Once you've actually finalized and established the foundation of the relationship, what broke that relationship? Because something happened that would have caused him to say he's only staying in the relationship for the children. There's a massive break and breach of trust. Something has happened that has poured water onto that chemistry. What is it that broke that relationship? If he had been traveling, if he had been out of town, if he had not been there for his wife emotionally, and she had basically had an affair, there would have been a breakdown of the relationship. Hypothetically, it could go in any direction, but you want to find out the foundation. You want to find out, where does the break come? What is the cause of the break? And then you need to go, and I'm not doing this very clearly, but pretend that's underneath there. You need to then go to the children. And you need to find out how happy are the children. Because parents stay together for the children while the children are begging for their parents to get divorced. And there are just way too many cases of this, where parents are saying, I'm staying for you, my love. And they're like, please, just stop the fighting. I want to get off. So you have to be very careful that you are dealing with the direct circumstances. The fact is, the fact that her one child may not be the father's tells me already that there's probably been infidelity. and he's not an idiot, because you can't do that and expect people to be completely in the dark. Your body language, everything about you will tell a story. So there are a lot of signs that actually tell that there could have been infidelity. The cause of that infidelity may not, people may say it's not her fault because he wasn't around and this and that. That's nonsense. Those are excuses that people make. If you're not in love with somebody and they're not there for you, get a divorce. Don't go and have an affair. So there are many things that we can look at. I hope that answers as best we can. Is it clear enough? Do you have any questions? Any questions on that one? All good. Okie dokie. It is complex. There's no doubt about it. These are crises. But the particular pattern that I want you to see, you've got to go back to the spider and not spend too much time on the cobwebs. Yes. Sorry, do you mind using the mic because we've got live streamers? Sorry.
Okay.
No problem.
Seeing that you're discussing you're talking to
Yes.
both parties,
Yes.
do you ever release any information?
No. No.
No?
Only with permission. So you can see both parties and you will actually say to that person, do you mind in the next session, I will assist you to be able to be strong that I may relay some of this information. I really feel very strongly that it is not necessary to reveal that that child may not be the father's biological child. The only person in that scenario who's going to get really badly hurt is that child. So there is no need. That is confidential information, and it is not your story to tell. Please don't tell it. If she wants to, at a particular stage, reveal that, she can reveal it by all means. But at no point in time do you reveal that information. If she says to you, please, I can't carry this guilt anymore. I want the truth out, but I don't have the guts to do it. Would you help me? Then you help her. But other than that, it is nobody's news to share. I hope that answers your question. Right, let's go to scenario 3. Another question, yes.
So the solution to this complex situation here is that with counseling, they'll get together and still have the secrets that they have, but live happily ever after together.
No.
No.
That's a very good question, because what will happen? What will happen is that they have to face the fact that he is adamant that he's only staying for the children. It means he left the marriage a long time ago. Well, he needs to choose, because if he's, I hear you, the statement was made so they would end up getting a divorce. Technically, their marriage ceased a long time ago.
Next stage of helping them to part
Yes.
and counseling
Assisting
them that
them.
way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. What you will do is that you will make sure that both parties, and I'm just going to put mom and dad there because at the end of the day, this is about the kids. What will happen is that dad has to face his feelings. He needs to clearly say, I have no love. And he needs to verbalize that. He needs to say, I am only here for the kids. She then has heard this probably a lot of times. She has to decide, are you going to sacrifice the rest of your life with somebody who doesn't even want to try? You will be asking questions like, is there any possibility? There are marriage tests that you can take them through, and they will tell you whether your relationship is bankrupt or not. And if your relationship is bankrupt, you liquidate, because there's no alternative. These two people living together are not a good example to their children. When their children grow up, they will be perpetuating and replicating exactly what they see mom and dad do. They will live, as children, they will live totally dysfunctional lives because you are setting that example for them. And that is not a solution. Do I propagate divorce? God forbid. Absolutely not. Divorce is an absolute sin. There are no winners in a divorce. Can divorce be avoided? Only if you have two parties who want to try. If one party wants to try and give their whole heart and their whole life, but not the other party, you're wasting your time. And that's where that becomes so critical. If he doesn't even want to try, don't waste the rest of your life. God has a plan for you. So there's a lot, it is a complex situation. But you get them, people need to be honest. They make excuses. She did this, I did this, he did this, that. Just be honest. What did you do? What are your faults? What did you bring into this relationship that has actually created damage, incredible damage? Tell me. Well, I suppose I could have been at home more. Oh, really? Okay, let's face head on. What did you do to contribute to the breakdown of this marriage? As soon as people are honest, it can be a David-Nathan situation where David says, that's despicable. You can't possibly have, this man couldn't possibly have treated this poor man so badly. And Nathan says, David, you're the guy. And that's when the realization comes. So you're not looking at what everybody did that was wrong. The one party slandering the other party, you want every party to slander themselves in honesty. What have you done? Not what did your partner say, what did he do? What have you done? Because there isn't a person on the planet that doesn't contribute to the breakdown of a marriage. Okay, then we move to a sad situation. Yes, sorry.
Sorry, just one last question.
Yes.
Wouldn't the fact that the dad is in counselling, meaning he wants to actually save the marriage?
I think that there are many times where a wife will drag, and when I say drag, I mean drag a person to counseling. So the wife will say, I can't live like this anymore. This is a loveless marriage. I'm not prepared to put up with this. For the sake of the children, please come with me to counseling. And remember, the only reason he's staying is for the sake of the children. So for the sake of the children, he will come. And we do see a lot of men who are not at all happy to be in counseling. But when you deal with those men in front of the woman very directly, and I'm not saying rudely, very directly, and you're saying, how do you feel about the fact that this relationship ended a long time ago? There are many people who grieve the death of a relationship long before they tell anybody. So they come to terms with it, but they haven't told anybody. They've lived it, but they haven't actually expressed it. So by the time a man comes in, you can actually help him to say, is there any hope? If you feel there's no hope, this is not the right thing to do. Face your feelings. State, I have no more feelings. I can't generate feelings. You can never make a person develop chemistry. You can't. You can stand on your head. You can't develop chemistry. So you can respect a person. You can like them as a friend. You can do whatever you like. But if a man gets to a point where he doesn't have that emotional contact, that emotional link, and it is because of infidelity or something else, you have nothing to rebuild. There are thousands of couples who stay together. And here's something that I want to say, that I am not propagating separation. What I'm propagating is brutal honesty. Many people celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, and they have remained together for 50 years. And I'm telling you now, it happens so often. The husband passes away, and does the wife grieve? Not a chance. She is so relieved. She's like, whew, at long last, I'm free. And then what happens? They come for counseling because you know why? They feel guilty. And I'm saying, lady, don't feel guilty. You gave the best years of your life because you were loyal, you were faithful, you honored the Lord, you did the best that you could. You faced abuse that you should never have faced. Who says that two people linked together with a little piece of paper by a department that can't even maintain their own records must stay together when the husband is so extremely abusive? Do you think God would want people to remain in an abusive situation? And I'm not talking about arguments over who put this cup here and who put that. I'm talking about constant abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, degrading a person, making them feel humiliated in front of their friends, telling them that they're worthless and useless and stupid. Get out. Get out. I would say to a man who does that to me, I would say to him, listen, I am useless, I am stupid, I am worthless in your sight. I'm out of here. I'm going to relieve you of this useless, stupid, worthless burden. I'm gone. And then you see, but I do love you. Too late, buddy. Remember something, that a little piece of your soul is killed and is affected every time you have those arguments where you're made to feel like a doormat. So men need to know there comes a time when the line will be drawn. Let's move on. And we are now dealing with the death of a counsellor. You've been counselling a 35-year-old lady, Renee, for a number of months. And in that time, developed a strong counselling relationship. Renee was facing some serious trials in her life. The business she owned was in financial trouble. Her husband constantly accused her of having an affair and threatened divorce. She attended a church that made her believe that the problems she was facing was because she was not living in God's will and must have sin in her life. Every session you would work together through the challenges. Renee was a very emotionally vulnerable person and was often overwhelmed by life itself. She had confided her innermost fears and personal thoughts to you. Renee then missed a session during the week, and you were quite concerned because this was out of character for her, as she had always notified you in the past if she was unable to keep her appointment. As you read the newspaper later that day, you realize that Renee took her life, and you are deeply shocked and saddened by the news. Renee's husband knew she was seeing you and now wants to get more information about what was discussed in the sessions you had with her. How should you respond to this request, and what issues will you need to consider?
Well, Sandy, first of all, our group felt that confidentiality is key, and if he had to phone us up and ask us to divulge any information about what was discussed in the sessions, we would say, unfortunately, we cannot share that information, and we feel that he might need counseling, grief counseling or crisis counseling at this point in time, because maybe he's also feeling a bit guilty because she's taken her life. And I would not do the counseling personally, because he might be on at me the whole time to divulge the information. So I would try and find another counselor for him, preferably a man, because very often people don't want to be counseled by the same sex as the person that was
Correct.
the brunt of whatever happened. And also I would make it clear to him that in no way was her failure in the business or the life anything to do with sin that was committed by her, because God does not function that way.
Right, 100%.
And possibly even recommend that he came and attended our church instead of the one that he was attending. And he could work, from there on he could, after the funeral and everything, go for his counseling and make something of his life.
Yes.
And not have so much blame on his wife and believe that she did all those things.
Right, right.
But we sworn to confidentiality, and if we break that confidentiality, nobody else would want to come to us for counseling.
Absolutely. Thank you. Very, very good. Very well done. If you ever are faced with a situation, this is a situation that I was faced with. This is an actual counseling scenario. And a few of the statistics and the facts I've changed, but this particular lady, in the counseling sessions, she was doing really, really well. We had managed to draw up a budget for her business, and she was starting to be able to pay back her debt, and things were starting to come right. So the only thing I can imagine is that it was triggered by a very, very heated argument at home. So you can literally be rectifying everything externally, but the person that soul lives with can trigger it at any point and make that person feel worthless or useless or stupid or it's impossible or just accusations that can't be helped. And then a person's emotions, especially being in a movement like they are in, and if you are in a movement that is very emotionally charged, you find that a person's emotions can literally fly off the handle at any point in time, and there's a huge lack of control. So the important thing is that husband will be in a state of shock, rightfully, as you have said. That person will be in a state of shock. When that person comes to speak to you, I would recommend that you tell them everything that is okay to share. Because if you say, I'm not prepared to divulge anything, what you do is you make that person immediately feel that they are on the back foot and you get defense. That defense is not a very good thing for the ministry, and it's not a very good thing for future counseling of that person. So what you do is you tell them all the positives that you have, and you can talk for an hour on things that do not pertain to the confidential aspects. You will bring the husband in. You will condole with him. You will tell him that you were working with her and that she was working through her debt and that she was making incredibly good progress. And you basically have an opportunity to make him realize the role that he has played in her reaction, because he shouldn't get away with it. If he triggered it, he will feel rotten and good. But if he didn't trigger it, he won't feel anything. He'll just feel the sorrow. And I'm not saying that you want to rub his nose in it, but if he was unkind and unfair, you can tell him things like, she was committed to you. She did love you. She was trying to get her life in order. We worked through certain spiritual goals. All of that, that's not confidential stuff. There are certain things that are highly confidential, and then there's information. And that's exactly what happened. And I condoled and I said we would assist in any way we possibly could, and told him about how amazingly well she was doing, but that at the end of the day, a person's life is in their hands, not in anybody else's hands. I cannot sit back and feel guilty as a counselor because she took her life, but I was counseling her. I gave her the equipment and the tools to do the best for her life. What she does with that is up to her. I do not have a sleepless night because she made that poor choice. I know that I gave everything I possibly could have given in advice to guide and direct her. The fact that she made a very, very poor choice, and she had beautiful children, one in grade 8 and one in grade 10, the fact that she made that decision, she must have been at an extreme low and completely not comprehending what she was doing. So she was in a state that she needed to be hospitalized, and she never had that support. But God is bigger than any scenario we would ever face. And in his full understanding, he didn't cause it, but he allowed it. And he chose to recall her home as an ambassador, to pull her back and say, I don't like what's going on in your life down there. I want you home with me. And you can't get a more beautiful scenario than that. The way she went, tragic, but her mind was completely out of it. So you can't sit there and actually say, what if? We can't. We're not God. You take the situation as it is and you say, Lord, this is totally in your hands. I surrender it to you. And I pray that the family will get the support that they need. I offered full support at any time that they wanted. That's all anybody can do. So I hope that answers that scenario, which is a tough one. You're not being dishonest by not revealing the confidential matters. You're just giving what is allowed. Okay, last group. Life matters. You've been counseling someone who is suffering from liver failure. I hope there are no Trevors here. I haven't marked any assignments of anybody who's a Trevor. So Trevor is only 45 years of age, and he's been diagnosed with this condition approximately 3 years ago. His state of health is rapidly deteriorating, and he's recently been hospitalized awaiting a transplant. Trevor has a rare blood type, and all attempts to acquire a compatible organ for him have been unsuccessful. The medical team is urging Trevor to move on to a more intensive life support system while he awaits a transplant. You've worked with Trevor regarding his deteriorating health and related issues for over 18 months. He's accepted his declining health and has worked through his feelings about death. He's now faced with the prospect of spending his final days in intensive care and has been weighing his options about refusing treatment or waiting for the transplant. During your last counseling session with Trevor and his wife, Trevor decided that he doesn't want any further treatment and wants to return to the comfort of his home to die. He's requested your support in this and asked that you address his family and his doctor to inform them of his decision. What should you do?
Okay, so our group did discuss quite a few aspects, so I'm just going to summarize what we came up with.
Good.
So obviously this has been a an ongoing disease. So it's not as if it just happened overnight and that he's making a rash decision. This is a decision that would take like a lot of thinking. And the fact that it would be uncomfortable in the hospital, that he doesn't stand a very good chance of actually getting a liver, we need to respect his wishes. So that was one of the first things. And then we said that we also need to counsel him on his spiritual position. We need to make sure that he knows where he's going as well. It's useless that we're saying, okay, we respect your decision and we carry on with the family and not counseling him and making sure that he's secure and that he's going to heaven with the Lord. We said that we would speak to the doctor separately and offer our support to the doctor as well, because this was an ongoing battle, so the doctor would be quite close to the patient as well. So it's important to provide our support to them and make sure that the doctor doesn't push the patient continually and say, but listen, there's still possibilities and everything. This is the patient's decision and we need to support them. And the doctor can just assist in making the patient comfortable at home. Then we can have a joint, not a joint, but we need to basically sit with the family first, apart from the patient, from the gentleman, and make sure that they can first give their emotional responses. We obviously don't want to set the gentleman in a bad situation where they're all going at him and saying this is the wrong decision. We need to allow their emotional responses with us, and we can guide them through it, and then everyone gets together.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Oh,
All
there
right.
is an aftermath,
Yes.
so that we can counsel the family members as well afterwards or offer counseling to say, listen, we understand this is a very emotional, traumatic experience for each one of them, and to say, regardless now of this group, I would almost say group therapy session with him, come to us, discuss your personal feelings and help you deal with it, and also offer them spiritual guidance
Yes, very much.
with that.
Absolutely. So it basically becomes not just individual counseling, but group counseling as well. Okay, fantastic. All right. Very good. You've got the general gist of everything that you need, and you've covered all bases, which is very important. There is, however, one very important thing that you need to realize. The minute you get involved if there are family members who don't live in the city, who can't be part of the counseling, and they know that you spoke to the doctor because he asked you to speak to the doctor, you are basically making a decision on behalf of the family. When it comes to a decision for a person to die at home, you keep well away from that decision. Because life comes from God. We don't hold life in our hands. A family can make that decision. A counselor cannot give their opinion. So what would happen is that everything you've said is 100% correct. But at no point in time, when you are going through all of this, which is very good, do you ever say, I think it would be good for him to die at home. It's not about you. You are a support structure. You are a support system. When it comes to the family talking to the doctor, the counselor must not be around for that discussion. It's a safety net because you do not know what the repercussions will be. Let's say that Trevor has a daughter who is from a previous marriage who consults with the family and says, why did my father not get the correct medication? And the family says, no, it was his wish to actually die at home. But he is not in a sane state of mind. He needed to get the proper medication. Yes, but we discussed it all and we had the counselor come. And then you contact the counselor and the counselor says, I have helped the family through this very trying situation and this is what he wanted. You become an accomplice to that scenario. If she decides that she wants to take it further with the family, you've got a very, very serious ethical problem if you give your opinion at a time like that. So whether you think Trevor should die at home or in hospital, you cannot give your opinion. And I'm not getting the impression, by the way, from the fourth group, I'm not getting the impression that you would have given your opinion. I'm just saying over and above what you're saying, you cannot be there and say, you need to respect your father's decision. You need to respect your husband's decision. You'd never comment on that. You can be there for them. You can support them. But at no point in time do you give your opinion as a counselor. And definitely not. If they want to go to the doctor and speak to the doctor and say, this is Trevor's wish, I would say to Trevor, when he says, Trevor's decided he doesn't want treatment, he wants to return to his home, and he has requested your support in this, I would say to him, Trevor, this is not a decision that I can actually support you in. Because it's not for me to make that decision. It's between you and your family members. So I can support them behind the scenes, but I cannot speak to the doctor. It's one area I will not be able to go to. You sort with your family. You make sure that your daughters and your children and your wife and everybody else, they will go and they will talk to the doctor, but I will not be speaking to the doctor. Okay. Question? No problem.
One of the things we took into consideration was that the gentleman is about 49 years old, so he's still quite young.
Yes.
So looking at the age that the children would usually be, they're quite young.
Yes, yes.
So they wouldn't exactly be able to make the decisions that would say, listen, or approach a doctor, for example, to say, listen, but why isn't my father carrying on with medical care? They would have
Yes.
to go through the mother.
Yes.
And I think sometimes at that age as well, they wouldn't be, I think they would still have the feelings where they want the father to carry on with the treatment, but
Yes.
I don't think they would be as rebellious in which they would take on a doctor or anyone like that.
Yeah. Very
so
good
that was one
point.
of the things we did consider.
Definitely.
And then if you say we can't speak to the doctor ourselves,
Yes.
would it be a good idea to first let the wife inform the doctor,
Yes.
and then afterwards obviously see if the doctor needs counselling in any way? Or do we just let the counsellor do him do his
The
own
doctor
thing?
is there. The doctor is there from a medical perspective. So when it comes to the medical scene, we are not experts. We keep away from that platform. Our opinion doesn't count. It really is an emotive issue between the family and the doctor. Medically, we are out of that equation. Because we may think we're helping the family, but it has happened way too many times in counseling where Family members have made a decision and they regret it afterwards. And if you're part of that equation, you can't help them. You've got to remain neutral. And if I could use a scenario, and I hope it isn't going too far, but I like illustrations because they tend to bring a lot of clarity, and I promise I'm going to finish soon. As a church, we are apolitical. What apolitical means is that we remain neutral at all times. If I want to be a member of a particular party, and I say to you, I'm a member of this party, what about the people immediately I cut off the opportunity to reach people who are not part of my party with the gospel, because they immediately say, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that party. I don't agree with that party. So what happens is that from a medical perspective, it's like being amedical. It's not your decision, and it's not your platform. And the medical profession know what they're doing. You are merely a support system for the family. Your opinion actually doesn't count at all. You support them, you can run around, you can make meals for them, you can do anything you like, but you cannot say what you think should happen. I hope that answers your question. Remain amedical, just like you need to remain apolitical if you're in the ministry, because you isolate people immediately if you choose a party that they don't support. Without even saying 2 words, if you walk around saying, I'm a member of this party and I believe that what they're saying is the truth, you isolate anybody who's not a member of that party. It's wrong. Okay, right, I think we're done. I need to say that you all need to give yourselves a hand because I think you did exceptionally well. Thank you very much. I do apologize. We've gone over time a little bit, but it's very important. And this is one of the big tests to see, practically speaking, if people come your way, and I would say that you have passed the test. You've learned some important things along the way that you can apply. Just make sure that you remain neutral at all times. Giving support is one thing. Giving your opinion is another. Let's pray. Lord, we do thank you that we've been able to go through these scenarios. We know that they are so tragic, and we know that there are people facing these things every single day. They've got their lives in a total mess. But Lord, you are able to unravel all of that chaos. As we direct them to you and guide them and support them spiritually, Lord, help us to know that you are the great physician. You are the one that is there to give them the comfort and the hope. And we are merely instruments in your hands to guide and direct. Lord, I pray your blessing on every person that has been able to make it tonight, to those that will live stream, that they will pick up from this recording. Lord, have your hand upon all of us until we meet again. Amen.